Is it possible for a city to be occupied by its own government? Something unprecedented is tearing through the American Midwest this month, and it has nothing to do with the winter cold. It is a legal and cultural firestorm that is forcing us to ask a terrifying question. Where does the power of the federal government end and the sovereignty of a state begin? The surge. On December 1st, the Department of Homeland Security pulled the trigger on Operation Metro Surge, the largest domestic operation in the history of this country. They flooded the Twin Cities with 3,000 federal agents, a sea of tactical gear from ICE, Border Patrol, and HSI. To the federal government, this is a mission of necessity. They argue that this massive show of force is the only way to restore order, targeting fraud and executing thousands of long-standing deportation orders. And the numbers are staggering. In just the first few weeks, ICE reported carrying out over 3,400 arrests in the region. The narrative gap. But as the federal footprint grew, the streets of Minneapolis became a powder keg. High-stakes encounters are now happening in broad daylight, and the communication between local police and federal agents has completely disintegrated. In early January, the city watched in shock as Renee Good, a 37-year-old mother and U.S. citizen, was fatally shot during an encounter with an ICE officer. Then, just days ago, on January 24th, the tension turned deadly again. Alex Pretti, a nurse who spent his life caring for veterans at the VA hospital, was killed in a confrontation with Border Patrol during a protest. This is where the story splits in two. The federal government has officially branded these individuals as public safety threats and domestic terrorists. They stand firmly behind their agents, insisting that every protocol was followed in the heat of a high-pressure zone. But local leaders aren't buying it. The mayor of Minneapolis and the Minnesota Attorney General have stepped forward to challenge that narrative. Citing video evidence, they say, tells a completely different story. The showdown in court. We are now witnessing a full-blown jurisdictional crisis. Minnesota's Attorney General has taken the fight to federal court, filing a lawsuit to halt the operation entirely. He isn't calling it a policy change. He's calling it an unconstitutional occupation that is crippling local law enforcement. Just this week, a federal judge sat in the middle of this war, hearing arguments on whether the White House has the plenary power to flood a city with agents without the state's consent. The Department of Justice claims the states have no right to nullify federal law. Minnesota counters that the federal government is overstepping its constitutional bounds and inciting public panic. The ripple effect. This isn't just a Minneapolis story. The shockwaves are hitting the economy, too. Down in Georgia, a federal raid at a Hyundai EV plant saw nearly 500 workers detained.
South Korea is working to secure the safe return of hundreds of citizens after they were caught up in an immigration raid last week. A dramatic scene on Thursday when federal agents executed a raid on a Hyundai facility and battery plant in Georgia, arresting 475 people, a majority of them South Korean nationals.
Many of them South Korean tech experts who were essential to the facility. Now, the South Korean government is demanding answers, and billions in foreign investment are hanging by a thread. The thinking immigrant perspective. Look at the math. We are now spending $28 billion a year on this machinery. We are seeing a 2,400% increase in the detention of people with no criminal records. The question for us today isn't just about immigration policy. It's about the very soul of the system. Is this massive surge the price of national security? Or is a federal force this large, operating without local coordination, changing the very character of American life? Does this make you feel safer? Or does it feel like a line has been crossed? Let's talk about it in the comments. I'm the Thinking Immigrant. Subscribe for the deep dive.